Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I am your host, Dr. Heidi Horsley, and I am here today with my friend and co-host, Alan Pedersen. Hi, Alan.
How are you doing?
Good. I'm excited to have you here today. My mom couldn't come, and so I love that you stepped in.
It's exciting to be here today. You know, filling in for Dr. Gloria Horsley is not easy. She's a doctor, I'm not, and I kind of thought, imagine if you went to the dentist and you went in there and they said, the dentist isn't in today, but Alan's here, and he seems to know a lot about teeth. So that's kind of, I'm just going to do the best I can. I understand grief and loss, and we're going to have a good show.
You do understand it, and you've done about 10 of our shows. And in fact, a funny thing, one of our shows was that Alan co-hosted. I wasn't here for this one.
I remember this.
So I get a call from my mom, and she says, I have good news and bad news. The good news is that one of our shows has just won a prestigious award.
Right.
The bad news is you weren't on it. Alan was co-hosting.
Yeah, you go. That was a lot.
True story. True story. So we are going to be talking today with our guests who are all bereaved siblings, and we're going to be talking about understanding the uniqueness of sibling grief, which is a sweet spot for me since my brother died. And I'm going to start first, before we introduce our guests, with introducing Alan. We've worked together for many, many years.
Almost 20.
Yes, almost
That's
20.
hard to believe, yeah.
He is the former executive director of the Compassionate Friends. And Alan is an award-winning singer, songwriter, television writer, and host.
Right.
His daughter Ashley died in an automobile accident at 18 years old. He has presented programs for grieving families in over 1,600 cities, which is phenomenal.
It's crazy.
1,600 as part of the Angels Across the USA tour. So welcome, Alan.
Thank you. It's my honor to be here, and our great guests are just, I'm so excited.
If you want to know more about Alan, please look at his website, because you're still touring right now. You're touring quite a bit.
Finishing up this spring, be done in May, so yes.
So if you want to book him for any events, go to his website.
Angels Across the USA.
Yep.
That's where you can
find me.
find
And we will post it.
Thank you, Heidi.
Okay, so sitting right next to Alan is Jason Wendroff-Rawnicki. He has been a guest on our show before, so please go and look at our shows and you can find him. Jason is a certified yoga educator with a master's degree in psychology. He is an entrepreneur and business owner, and he co-founded Shine Yoga Center in New Jersey. He lost his sister Lauren in a car accident at 24 years old. And in November, he will be launching his podcast, and it's called Small Pieces, Big Picture. So please go to his website so that you can find out more about his podcast. You also do virtual meetings with the Compassionate Friends.
Yeah, so right before the pandemic, we started an online platform where we get together every week and have Zoom meetings. Okay. And anyone can sign up to get the weekly updates. They can go to siblingisland.com, and I send a weekly update with what I'm dealing with my grief, and then also the links to the meetings for every week.
Okay, I love this. So siblingisland.com is where people can go to get more information.
Correct.
Great resource.
Wow. I know, right?
Yeah, terrific.
Thank you. Okay, and so next to Jason is Fallon Reynolds. Fallon lost her older brother Anthony to an accidental overdose when he was just 35 years old. Today she is involved in the Compassionate Friends, both on a local and a national level. That's where we met. And she volunteers at the registration desk during conferences and chaperones the younger siblings in activities. Welcome to the show, Fallon.
Thank you, Heidi.
Welcome.
And I've got to say welcome to Jason, too. I don't think I welcomed you.
It's good to be here.
So next to Fallon is Keith Singer. Keith has been a guest before. He is very involved in the sibling loss world, as all of these siblings are. Keith lost his sister Lori at 18 in an automobile accident while she was in the United States Navy. And as a mom of a veteran, I want to thank her and your whole family for her service. Keith facilitates a Compassionate Friends monthly chapter. Where is the chapter, Keith?
So it's Staten Island.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And at national conferences, we'll do workshops.
Yes. So he's involved locally in Staten Island facilitating Compassionate Friends monthly chapters, and he's very involved nationally as well. He moderates panels and facilitates workshops at the Compassionate Friend national conferences. My favorite is a very popular standing room only workshop that he does. It's a sibling panel for parents and grandparents. Yeah. It is awesome, and it is candid and real.
Helps a lot of people like myself get great information.
Yeah, I agree.
Thanks. Cool.
So welcome, Keith. And next to Keith is a dear friend that I've known for over 20 years, Elizabeth Devita-Raeburn. She is an author, journalist, and blogger. Her brother Ted died of a rare autoimmune disease at age 17. Her stories have appeared in the Washington Post, Self, Glamour, Psychology Today, and many, many other publications. And Elizabeth is the author of what I think is, I'm going to say it, the most groundbreaking sibling book out there. She knows I feel this way. It's called The Empty Room, Understanding Sibling Loss. So welcome, Elizabeth.
Thanks for having me here, Heidi.
And then next to her is Jordon. Jordon is in the house.
Oh boy.
Our funny comedian, Jordon Ferber. Jordon is again very involved in building awareness for sibling loss. He is also a comedian. He is a podcaster. He is a public speaker. His brother Russell died in a car accident at 21. Mm-hmm. I remember that. It's not on my cards, but I remember that. Jordon is very involved in the Compassionate Friends, locally and nationally. He runs the New York City Sibling Manhattan chapter.
Correct.
And that meets monthly on the east side.
Well, my sibling group, actually, since the pandemic, I've been running it on Zoom every week.
Okay. This is good to know. So if you're out there, if you want to join this chapter, Jordan's been doing it for a long time, please do. Jordon also has a popular podcast called Where's the Grief? He and his family run the Russell Ferber Foundation, which provides scholarships to the Culinary Institute of America. It is a great comedy show every year in the Village. And let me think if my mind is working right, June 28th.
It is June 28th this year. Yep, Wednesday, June 28th. It's our 18th annual
6:30
fundraiser.
p.m. doors open.
Correct.
I will be there.
It's going to be good.
I don't miss it. I don't miss it because I love it. And lastly, Jordon does a workshop every year,
Yeah.
which I love, at Compassionate Friends because it's called How's Your Mother?
That kind of epitomizes the, for a lot of us,
Yeah.
Yes.
the whole concept of why we're here. But
Totally. So this is my dynamic duo, Alan,
Yeah.
of siblings.
yeah, this is.
So we are going to ask a question. I don't know if you want to ask it, but it's the first.
You go ahead and start us off with this one.
Okay.
I don't want anybody throwing
So-
anything at me, so you throw it down.
The first question we want to ask all of you, and I think we're going to start with Jason and work our way down, is what do you wish, and I know you all don't know the questions I'm going to ask, because Alan and I kind of wanted it to be really spontaneous. What do you wish other people understood about sibling loss?
Let me, before you answer, kind of go where we were going with this. Like to demystify sibling loss for a lot of us, and not just for parents who've lost a child that have surviving siblings, a world we all know, but to me it's a marginalized loss. But I don't know that from my experience. So kind of demystify in the sense of, what do you want people to know about sibling loss that they might not just think of when somebody says to them, oh, my brother or my sister died?
Yeah, so I think for me the biggest thing is that it's not just marginalized, but it's almost invalidated at points. Mm-hmm. I know when I lost Lauren in 1998, like everyone was asking, how's your mother? Like Jordon, that's why Jordon's workshop is titled that, is because they didn't ask about me. They didn't ask how I was doing. It was all about, how's your mom doing? How's your dad doing? And I didn't even get any recognition that I was going through a loss as well. So it was really difficult at that time. And even, Keith does his New York Jordon does the New York chapter, Keith does Staten Island, but there are many parts of the country that there are no resources for siblings, and that's why I did start the Zoom after the TCF Philadelphia conference in 2019, is because a lot of parts of the country are underserved. And so we really need to bring more awareness to that sibling loss affects a lot of different people.
So you're saying, hey, if no one else is going to do it as siblings, we're going to do it.
Exactly.
Because other people certainly aren't doing it for you.
Correct. And even when it's connected to like the parents, we're almost a secondary thought, right? It's like, how's your parents? They're doing fine, but what about me? And I think it's really important that us as siblings and as adult siblings that we really take care of each other.
Right. What do you think?
I mean, Jason said it amazingly. We are the last ones thought of in sibling grief. It's people don't realize when you lose your sibling, you're losing a major part of yourself.
Yeah.
Your siblings are with you from when you're little. You grow up with them. You're supposed to grow old with them. When that doesn't happen, it completely changes your outlook on life and your genetic makeup in a way.
Yeah, it's almost like the loss of an
everything
identity.
changes. Yeah. Yep. You become a completely different person, and no one focuses on that. No one gives it the attention that it deserves.
Well, and Fallon, I'm thinking for you, you're getting married in September,
Yes.
and Anthony won't be there.
No, he will not.
And that's a big deal, you know?
Anthony did not even get to meet my fiance. So there's no, I mean, Anthony's spoken of consistently in my house. He's a presence that is very, very large. So my fiance does know all about him, but they'll never have that connection, you know, and my wedding's coming and, you know, my brother's not going to be there. So now instead of trying to plan my wedding with him, I'm trying to plan ways to have him be there even when he's not.
Love that.
So Keith, along that same line, maybe throw this little extra caveat at you too. So as you've moved through life, and say a landmark day comes, a wedding or a graduation.
Or his children being born.
Has your experience been that people don't say, hey, I know that Lori's not here? Or is it forgotten all through the years?
I think it depends on who. Some people, you know, in your life today may not even realize or not even know, right? But I think the big key piece that Fallon was talking about is you have to kind of learn how to live now, right, without that emotional bond or that partner that was your sibling, right? Whether, you know, so I think that's the key important piece is as it was going on in time and longer time was passing, I felt like less and less people maybe aware of even, you know, that I'm going through this, that I had my children and not with my, you know, my sister there to share that with me. Only some people, right? So I think the key is we have a tight bond, and that's because we all know, we all get it, right? But a lot of my friends today may not even realize that.
You know what I love that I
loss.
saw on Facebook that your mother posted the other day? Your little boys, how old are they, 1 and 4?
They'll be two and 3.5.
2 and 3.5 had T-shirts on.
Oh, yes.
It said something like, I love my aunt.
Yeah, so it was my sister's 25th anniversary just last week, and so my kids had...
Some of that bittersweet, I think that in all grief that's not recognized enough. There's the sweet of having these little children, but there's the bitter part that your sister's not there to share and to see what you're seeing.
It's also just like the family dynamic. I think in the book I likened it to like a table that loses one of its legs. Like, you know, we have to figure out how to find the balance again, both within the context of the family and also just how we function day to day for ways that we relied
And I think
on
it's
our
interesting
sibling.
that you bring that up, because I would say in my work with families, and of course mine's more geared toward parents, that's a big question for them is, you played this role, you know, everybody does have that role, and it makes the machine work. And then they're confused, you know. Maybe the child that died was the black sheep, or the one, or maybe they were the leader, or the mommy type role. But now who's who?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that, you know, that enough attention is put on that, because that's something that endures and lasts through the years, doesn't it?
I think this is probably a thing about loss across the board, but certainly with the sibling loss is that this is forever. You know, it's the permanence of his absence that I have to continually deal with. So the ways that grief changes over time, it's still there. You know, it doesn't go away. It's constantly evolve. I have to constantly evolve the way that I move throughout the world to adapt to, you know, what's being thrown at me. And it's hard without my brother, but it's forever. I have to be dealing with it for the rest of my life. And it's, you know, I think people that want to be in your life at some point, there's always people that say, you're still dealing with that? Still? It's like, well, yeah, he's still dead. So I'm going to continue to be dealing with it until while I deal with everything else. And it's hard to figure out where you put that, where the burden is for yourself, and how you manage to bring other people into the fold, because some people get tired of feeling like you're their shoulder to cry on, but it's not about finding a shoulder to cry on. It's like, I'm just, you know, crying out there. So finding places where I'm allowed to do that, where I'm allowed to continue to work on it, I think is one of the biggest challenges. But when you find it, you know, having people, it's no substitute for that.
We want to run that question by each of you. What has your grief journey taught you about yourself?
My brother got sick when I was 6, so my whole life and my whole personality was shaped by his illness and then later by his death. So it's hard for me to parse out like what would have been different, because it started so young. Like, I don't have a lot of memory before that. Thinking in terms of identity, it's very obvious to me that I go through life as a younger sibling. Like, you know, on the surface, I'm like an only child now, but I very much relate to people as a younger child, partners, friends, you know, that kind of thing. I look and I've peopled my life with people who remind me of my brother and that kind of thing. In terms of grief journey, I mean, it's always there. It changes. It never ends, and I'm sort of, resigned and accepting of that, but also have sort of committed to it as a growth process.
Right.
And that's sort of how I get through. So I would say the grief journey has taught me that I can grow and be okay. It's not what I would have chosen, but I have a choice about how I go through
Isn't
it.
there a famous movie that's kind of based on the story of Ted? Can you share that with our audience?
Yeah, when my brother was still alive, there was a movie that came out called The Boy in the Plastic Bubble that was based in part on
Right.
his story and a boy in Texas. And it was an unauthorized movie, like nobody asked us permission. So it was pretty like fictionalized in some ways, but very on point in others. So it's been a weird sort of legacy to grow up with and live with, the fascination with it.
Right.
Because I don't really understand people's fascination with it. Like, there are a lot of made-for-TV movies. Why does that one,
Why do
stay?
we all remember that?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
What
I
we
don't
do.
know. Yeah. I've never liked John Travolta.
Okay, maybe I'm bringing up a source.
no,
Keith, is there anybody that you don't like? Or what have you learned about the people you now don't like? What has your grief journey taught you about yourself?
I think similar to Jordan in the fact that I can be vulnerable. I think it taught me empathy. But similar also is that I was 21 and I think it changed me as a person. I like to think for the better, but I don't really know what I would have, who I would have been, the career I would have been in
Right.
if I didn't have that loss. So, but I do think the important piece that I recognize is that it is okay to be vulnerable, and it taught me to be empathetic for sure. I would have never been. I wasn't the type of person that would be sitting here today doing something like
Sharing
this,
your
for sure not.
feelings
Exactly. That definitely was probably the extreme opposite, where I didn't share anything. I didn't think it was anybody's business to know. I let them know what I felt they needed to know, and that's it.
I feel like I'm living my life for myself and for my brother. See, now I'm getting nods here, and I don't know that parents and kids have the same thought, because we were taking the journey together. As Elizabeth always says, we're parallel travelers in life.
Right.
So I feel like hey, I'm here. I've got to live my best life because I'm doing it for my brother too, in a way.
Right.
I'm now living for two people. I have to make sure that I'm doing my best because I know it's what he would have wanted.
Yeah.
So it's constantly making me be a better person and making me go out there and do the things that he would have loved to do. Things that I would have never thought to do, I now want to take place in. Like we were talking earlier before we came in, places we've traveled or want to travel. And I'm like, I want to go to South Africa because I'm the nut job who now wants to go into a cage with a great white shark because my brother loved sharks.
Wow.
So it's kind of just doing things that would have scared the crap out of him, but he was fascinated with, now I'm fascinated with.
Yeah.
So it's kind of completely changed my way of thinking and living and just being that extra person for him.
I love that.
And for me, I know right in the beginning, going back to the identity piece, I didn't want to be known as the guy with the dead sister. Like I really was, I actually even fought that, like even embracing that part of my identity. And we always think of, a lot of times we think of the negative things about our grief, but I know for me for sure, like I've started to incorporate grief work in my yoga practice, in my working with clients, and because I know how important it is to have those role models, and knowing that the grief, being a bereaved sibling is just part of my identity, and it's not the whole thing. And so I really want to help people, like just to learn to manage it. And I know if this didn't happen to me, I would have lived a life where I would have been in a job I hated, worked 9 to 5. I wouldn't have had the courage to break out on my own and become an entrepreneur and do all of those kinds of things. And I'm as resilient as I am because my sister lived and because she died. And I wouldn't have been that person. And there's always that balance to find between, that the resilience can be a great thing because it keeps you persistent, but then sometimes I actually go through too much that I should like kind of cut out of my life that I don't always do. So there's always that finding that balance.
And I'm hearing like kind of themes of fearlessness.
For sure.
We lose some of our fear.
Yeah.
It's like we're more fearless.
Right, because I mean, we know the importance of what life is, and how quick. Lauren was here one day and she was gone the next. I had no time to say goodbye. Like she was here one day and gone, and so like I know how tentative it could be.
Right.
I'm sure that I tell all the people that I love them when I see them, because we don't know how much time we have.
And on this panel, everybody in this room, including Alan, our resident parent here, lost somebody in the prime of their lives.
Right.
These people were all young, you know, and they had a lot of life left in them. And so I guess my last question is, what would you say to someone who is new to grief? We'll start with Jason.
So my biggest suggestion would be really find support, because when I started my grief journey, there wasn't much. I remember sitting in Keith's basement, and we were all like within 6 months or a year, and we're just like kind of like, all right, what do we do with this grief thing? Now we're all further along on our journeys and have lots of experience. And so when it comes to different things like identity and how to restructure, look towards people that have been there and get the support you need, whether that's therapy, whether that's going out for a run or exercise or something physical, right? Make sure you have all of those support pieces in place, because it can help you navigate that journey and you don't have to feel like you're alone.
Love that.
Yeah, what do you say to somebody who's watching tonight, who's had the death of a sibling and maybe never even pondered this stuff? What do you say to them? Like, my life's not worth.
Breathe. That's a big one.
Breathe. You have to just take that moment for yourself. You have to let your grief sink in and feel it. And then you have to start working towards it, healing and getting that help that Jason's talking about. But in those first few hours, days, weeks, months, you need to breathe. And you need to take care of you.
Yeah,
And
it's big.
We say to parents, do the next thing. Just the next thing.
One
One step at a time.
one foot in front of the next, right?
Yeah.
Brushing your teeth, combing your hair. I think the important piece I would say is that there is no right way. I think there's a lot of pressure to grieve how people think you should grieve, right?
Yeah.
So I think important piece is to and understand that there is no right way, right? That's one. I think the second piece, important piece, is that it's not something you're just going to do and get through and get over. You have to figure it out. Everybody has to figure it out for themselves. How, what's going to work for them, and do more of that. But I think ultimately the big key important piece is to know there is no right way, and you're going to have to just go through this journey one step at a time, figuring it out as unfortunately life moves forward.
Yeah, love it.
Two things. One, it won't always be as incapacitating as it seems in the beginning. Like at first you're like, I can't survive. There's no way. And it changes and it gets better in a way. And the other thing, and I don't actually know if this is the right thing to tell somebody who's new in their grief, but I feel like we are sold a bill of goods when people talk about closure. It doesn't exist. Your relationship will be with you always, and I think that's actually a comfort. The idea of closure is you could cut this off and be disconnected, but this person was in your life, they shaped you. It doesn't make sense that you would close it off or whatever. So what's going to happen is that you're going to evolve with the loss and come to understand it. Like, it'll change over the course of your lifetime, but it's always going to be there in some way, but it won't be as acute and awful as it is in the beginning.
Well, and I heard something once, which I love, and I say it often: closure is for bank accounts, not love accounts.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great point too. And I tell people sometimes it might be the right thing to say, it's just the wrong time to say it.
Yeah.
So maybe somebody new in grief, you don't want to think that you're going to live a lifetime with this.
Yeah.
But in time, there's no way you wouldn't want to live a lifetime
Right.
with this, because the grief is the love. That's
Right.
what we carry.
Right.
Jordon, what would you say to that new person?
Well, I mean, I'll just reiterate, I guess, what Keith was talking about, is that there is no real right way to do this. As long as you're not hurting yourself or anyone around you, however you're doing it is how you're doing it. It's really hard to give ourselves permission to do it the way that we do it. And just to keep in mind that it is, you get to do it however you do it. You don't have to placate anybody else. It's really about self-care. Self-care is so important, and I think as siblings, sometimes it's so hard to carve out our own space, to do it the way that we do it. We bend over backwards to placate others so often that we can lose sight of our own needs. And self-care is inherently selfish in a way, so there's a little bit of shame and judgment that comes with taking care of our own needs in front of somebody else's. But I think that sometimes we need to do that in order for anybody to take care of our needs, because there's really nobody else that looks out for you the way that you do. And I think we need to be able to exert our own power over what we need, because it's so hard just to give ourselves permission to do that.
So, and mention your podcast again and the Manhattan chapter.
Yeah, my podcast is called Where's the Grief? I interview other comedians who have experienced loss, although I like to say it's not all comedians. I do interview other sad people too.
Yeah, there you go. And
I run the Manhattan chapter of the Compassionate Friends, and my sibling group meets every Tuesday, and the links are in the same email that Jason sends out every week on SiblingIsland.com.
Okay, and Keith, give a shout out again too.
We do a Facebook private group, Sounds of the Siblings. It's a group for those that lost a
So go
sibling.
to Facebook, Sounds of the
Facebook,
Siblings.
Sounds of the Siblings, private group. Yep.
And the national conference is in
Yep.
Denver.
National conference is in Denver. We also have the Staten Island chapter of TCF.
And your podcast is going to be?
In November, Small Pieces, Big Pictures. I'm kind of, I created a couple of episodes, and then I'm going to come back to that. But my weekly updates and links are on SiblingIsland.com. So
Anybody else have anything that you're putting out there?
Elizabeth's got her
Because
book.
I believe in giving people resources.
There's a couple
Anybody else?
things. I
Yeah.
want to give a shout out to Elizabeth. She's doing some workshops at Compassionate Friends this summer. What are the workshops at our national conference?
I got to remember
A
how I
writing
frame them.
workshop.
One's a writing workshop. It's sort of writing through grief, and one is sort of more about long-term
Terrific.
loss, like how it is over the long term. I also have a blog I've been sort of shaping.
Oh, that's right.
Called FindingTedDeVita.com that was sort of exploring, because my brother was in a bubble room, how he got through that given what we were all living through in the pandemic. Like we were all living a version of his life.
FindingTedDeVita.com.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, and your book again.
The Empty Room.
The Empty Room.
The Empty Room.
Yeah.
Fallon, what if people want to find you? What do they do? Go on Facebook. You're a valuable resource. Like I said, we've all had a lived experience, and there's nothing that can replace that. And Alan, I appreciate you being here
What
as
a
my
show.
co-host.
Thank you all for sharing.
Yes.
We did grief work here today. So, yeah, thank you. What a wonderful. Wow.
Super appreciate it. And we always say, if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless.
God bless.